Today, NVIDIA is an absolute behemoth. I mean, we're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar company sitting right at the bleeding edge of artificial intelligence, powering everything from massive data centers to those ultra-high-end gaming rigs we all drool over. But how did they actually get here? In this explainer, we are going to trace their incredible 30-year journey. And honestly, what's so fascinating is that their massive success today stands in stark contrast to the terrifying reality of their early days. Because let me tell you, it was definitely not a straight line to the top.
30. Back in the mid-1990s, that was the exact number of cash NVIDIA had left to survive. Literally 30 days. Their very first chip, the NV1, was this highly ambitious multi-function card, but its underlying architecture was fundamentally flawed. It used quadratic texture mapping, essentially drawing curves instead of the standard flat triangles the rest of the industry was adopting, like Microsoft's Direct 3D. It completely flopped. I mean, it nearly bankrupted the company right out of the gate.
NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, openly admits that without a massive lifeline, they were finished. NVIDIA was actually working on a contract for Sega's next-generation console at the time, but Jensen realized their quadratic architecture was just completely doomed. So, rather than writing out the bad contract, he flew to Japan, admitted the failure in person, and essentially begged for a lifeline. And amazingly, Sega's president, Shoichiro Irimajiri, believed in NVIDIA's potential. He convinced Sega's board to take their contract payment and turn it into a $5 million equity investment. To put that into perspective, they were founded in 1993 with just a $40,000 seed fund and hit that near-fatal wall by 1995. But that $5 million Sega investment, it gave them about 6 more months of oxygen. They brutally downsized the team to just 40 people, totally abandoned the quadratic architecture in favor of industry-standard triangles, and poured absolutely everything into their next chip, the Riva 128. And it worked. They shipped 1 million units in 4 months in 1997. It was an unbelievable turnaround that quite literally saved the company.
Section 1. The GPU Wars. Slaying the Competition. So, surviving that near-death experience meant NVIDIA got to enter a period of intense, cutthroat rivalry against the undisputed heavyweight champion of 3D graphics at the time, 3DFX. You see, 3DFX held a massive lead with their legendary Voodoo cards, but their real moat, their secret weapon, was the Glide API. That's essentially the software bridge connecting games directly to the hardware. It became the dominant standard for early PC gaming. Basically, if a game was going to look good in the late 90s, it practically had to run on Glide. This massive entrenchment forced NVIDIA to find a completely different strategic angle just to survive.
Then, in 1998, 3DFX made a fatal supply chain blunder. They bought a company called STB Systems for $141 million because they wanted to manufacture their own boards in-house. Well, this instantly alienated all of their third-party manufacturing partners, basically turning them into competitors overnight. NVIDIA, on the other hand, stayed incredibly agile. They used a virtual manufacturing model, relying on contract manufacturers in Asia, and gladly scooped up all those OEM partners that 3DFX had just tossed aside.
That one strategic misstep by 3DFX, compounded by a bunch of delays and manufacturing inefficiencies, led to a rapid, complete collapse. By late 2000, 3DFX was bankrupt, and NVIDIA swooped right in to acquire their assets and intellectual property. This was a massive victory that consolidated the market into essentially a duopoly between NVIDIA and ATI. And with the competition thinned out, NVIDIA was suddenly free to fund a highly speculative long-term gamble.
Section 2. The ultimate software gamble. Because let's be real, hardware alone didn't build the multi-trillion-dollar company we're looking at today. It was actually a secret weapon, cleverly disguised as a software platform. Launched in 2006, CUDA stands for Compute Unified Device Architecture. Jensen Huang had this brilliant strategic insight. The parallel processing power of a GPU, which calculates thousands of things at once to render graphics, could be used for far more than just video games. CUDA was the software platform that allowed developers to program these GPUs for general-purpose computing.
But here's the genius part. They didn't just launch it and hope for the best. They executed a patient, decade-long strategy. First, they built the platform. Then they seeded university research labs with free tools, free GPUs, and dedicated support. And then they just waited. By investing so heavily and so early, they ensured that an entire generation of researchers learned to code specifically on NVIDIA's platform. They created massive developer lock-in long before the AI revolution was even a blip on the radar.
Then, boom, 2012. A deep learning neural network called AlexNet achieves a massive breakthrough, proving to the world that GPUs were vastly superior to CPUs for training artificial intelligence. And because NVIDIA had spent the last 6 years meticulously building CUDA and seeding the academic ecosystem, their hardware was already the absolute de facto standard. The AI explosion perfectly collided with the ecosystem NVIDIA had patiently constructed.
Section 3. Transforming Gaming and Graphics. Now, while AI completely dominates the headlines today, we can't forget that NVIDIA's gaming sector is still a massive powerhouse, driving constant, ridiculous innovation. Although, you do have to laugh when you look at how their revenue mix has completely flipped. As of recently, a whopping 88% of NVIDIA's revenue comes from data centers. That's the AI hardware. Gaming, which used to be their entire identity, their bread and butter, is now just 9%. They completely transitioned from a gaming chip maker into a data center giant in just a few short years. But hey, that 9% still represents billions of dollars and over 100 million active gamers and creators. And the hardware in that gaming segment is still breaking every boundary. Take the RTX 50 series GPUs. They launched with up to double the performance improvements over the prior generation. That kind of massive generational leap is exactly what triggers major upgrade cycles for consumers who demand the absolute best visual fidelity. So what's keeping this gaming segment so highly lucrative, especially when they're up against heavy hitters like AMD? It really comes down to two main catalysts. First, AI PC adoption. NVIDIA is actually using AI to enhance graphics through tech like real-time frame generation, making their cards basically essential for serious gamers. Second, the explosive growth of the content creator economy. Creators on YouTube and TikTok absolutely require powerful GPUs for fast video editing and live streaming. Section 4, Powering the AI Revolution.
All right, let's build up to the main event and look at the absolute beasts of silicon that run today's data centers.
The exponential explosion in computing power here is just staggering. Look at this jump from 21 billion transistors in the 2017 Volta architecture to an astonishing 336 billion projected for the 2026 Rubin architecture. And that column for peak FP4 compute, that represents a hyper-specific math format that is literally the lifeblood of AI inference. Blackwell in 2024 hits 9,000 teraflops, but Rubin leaps to a staggering 50,000 teraflops. That is 50 petaflops of performance on a single architecture. It's almost hard to wrap your head around. To achieve that kind of raw compute density, the Rubin GPU, officially named the R100, utilizes TSMC's cutting-edge 3-nanometer manufacturing process. It features a dual-die design and an unbelievable 22 terabytes per second of memory bandwidth, using next-generation HBM4 memory. It is a chip specifically engineered from the ground up for incredibly complex agentic AI workloads. We're talking about AI that doesn't just answer your questions, but actually takes independent actions. 336 billion transistors on a single architecture. Think back to the very beginning of our explainer. In 1995, this company was down to a tiny, desperate 40-employee team with only 30 days of cash left, flying to Japan to beg for a $5 million lifeline. Today, they are etching 336 billion microscopic switches onto a single piece of silicon to power the entire future of human computing. It has to be one of the most remarkable strategic pivots in the history of business. Which brings us to our final takeaway. NVIDIA survived and conquered because they built the CUDA software platform a full decade before the AI wave ever crashed onto the shore. They paddled out into the ocean and they waited for the swell. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. If the absolute best time to build a platform is long before the revolution even starts, what invisible technological wave do you think is being seeded in secret right now?